Part 74. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjio Old Thief. Chapter 731. There was even a hint of relief in the doctor's voice. Finally met a madman. How can you be a doctor without patience? None of the people he met before were lunatics, so they were certainly not patients. But the one in front of him is a real lunatic. Now that there are patients, there are also doctors. Then, start treating the disease. Xiaoyao has been a doctor for 2 days and has done everything except treating diseases. Yang Er was still thinking about something. The doctor's voice rang in his ears again. Do you want to see a doctor? First, ask the patient about his or her wishes. If a person is sick and the other person doesn't want to see him, then the doctor shouldn't see him either. Yang Er raised his head with difficulty, then got discouraged and let it hit him back. Since I'm a lunatic and I'm in a mental hospital, I guess I need to see a doctor. Yang Er found it strange. I'm so fucking crazy, why are you asking me this? This doctor is too amateurish. Oh. Xiaoyao nodded and continued to ask. They said that a lunatic needs a guardian to accompany him to the hospital. Where is your guardian? Shadow 2. Talking about guardianship with the second Master Ying is a bit too funny. Delete all those above level 990. There will be no more than 1,000 people in the world who can defeat the second master of the film industry. Since he has such strength, what kind of guardian does he need? The doctor asked again. Second Master Ying thought for a while and gave an answer, my father. For ordinary people, it is reasonable for parents to act as guardians, right? Yang Er felt that he had learned something by following Master Ju. Xiaoyao shook his head, your father is also crazy. Yang Er fell silent again. What kind of family is this? One is crazy and the other is crazy. There is no normal person in the family tree. Since his relatives are no longer available, Yang Er can only find someone else. Yang Er announced another name. Yingju. Do you know Yingju? Help me call Master Ju and ask him to pick me up. As long as Lord Ju takes action, everything will be fine. Besides, if the doctor can't contact Ju yet, it's not Yang Er's problem. Since there is no guardian, he, a lunatic, cannot see a doctor. Yang Er should be released from the mental hospital. The more Yang Er thought about it, the more excited he became, and he couldn't help but praise himself. I'm such a genius. The air was silent for a minute. The doctor spoke again. The teacher said he has no time to take care of you. Shadow 2. This is a bit outrageous. Yang Er, who was lying on the hospital bed, rolled his eyes. Fuck you, Master Ju is in the abyss of power right now, and you can still call him and pay back the teacher, who do you think you are? Bad guy, how many apprentices does Master Ju have? 2, one is Xiaoyao, the other is. The two voices stopped suddenly at the same time. They thought of a possibility. Even a lunatic would find it absurdly possible. If this is true. Yang Er's body began to tremble, and while he was tied to the hospital bed, he twitched as if he was suffering from epilepsy. You. Yang Er struggled to raise his head again and tried to look at the other party. First a man in a white coat appeared in his field of vision. Not a Taoist robe. No problem. Yang Er breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at the other person's face again. A very ordinary face. No problem. Eliminating the possibility that the other party is the most powerful person is free. Second Master Ying completely relaxed and said with a smile, let me just say, how is it possible? The rest of the life? The bad woman suddenly asked. Bad thing, do you remember what the doctor looks like? Second Master Ying. He forgot. The doctor I just took a look at, he forgot what he looked like. Second Master Ying thought this was too funny. It was so funny that he laughed out loud. Lying on the hospital bed, he shouted, "Doctor, doctor, help me. I'm so crazy." It took 10 minutes for Mr. Ying to calm down and accept the facts before him. Xiaoyao didn't know why, but his consciousness left the Eternal Tower and lived like an ordinary person in Nanjiang City. In order to find freedom, Ying Er also entered Nanjiang City and lived like an ordinary person. What a coincidence! Xiaoyao became a doctor and Ying Er became a patient. Ying Er sighed, accepted the situation, and then said, "My father is crazy. Master Ninth is not free. My boss now is Master 4, who is Shura. Does he count as my guardian?" "Boss." Xiaoyao frowned slightly and said seriously, "It is illegal to employ mentally ill people to work." Second Master Ying quickly explained, "It's not a part-time job. I pay for it. Yes, I go to daycare." Only then did Master Ying remember that he had not received any salary, so how could he be considered part-time worker? Not only did he not receive his salary, but he also had to pay back money. It is said that Shura even asked the fifth demon god to collect the money. This is not a nursery. What is this? It's not okay for a mentally ill person to work part-time. Mental patients go to daycare, okay. Xiaoyao nodded slightly. Since it is a nursery, it can be regarded as a guardian. He has always been strict. Shura is not free at the moment. Xiaoyao started counting again. If Shura is the guardian of second Master Ying and Shura is not free, then he can only find people related to Shura. Shura called him third brother. So, look for yourself. After clarifying the relationship, Xiaoyao came to the conclusion. I am your guardian. Second Master Ying. It's whatever you say. Second Master Ying has given up resistance. He knew that he could not contact Zhao Qian or anyone. What do you say when contacting someone? You say Xiaoyao is crazy, playing doctor's house here? Regardless of whether there is something wrong with Xiaoyao's brain. It is generally accepted that Ying Er has a problem with his brain. Secondly, even if something goes wrong with Xiaoyao, who can help? If fourth master is still here, he will probably be useful. But the fourth master, the scourge of killing 1,000 swords, disappeared at this juncture. Now that we have a guardian, things go much smoother. As Ying Er's guardian, Xiaoyao agreed to Ying Er's treatment. As Ying Er's attending doctor, Xiaoyao began to design a treatment plan for Ying Er. Shadow 2. He felt that even if he was not crazy, he was probably crazy after being tortured like this. All right. Soon, Xiaoyao came up with a treatment plan. Sit and listen. When Xiaoyao meets other doctors, he will ask the other doctor to sit down first in case the patient is agitated. Second Master Ying, who was originally lying down, sat up. Treatment Plan 1, kill the bad woman's consciousness. Bad woman. Treatment Plan 2, kill the bad man's consciousness. Bad man. Treatment Plan 3, kill the consciousness of bad women and bad men. Shadow 2. Treatment Plan 9. Xiaoyao gave 9 treatment plans, and he felt they were almost enough. Xiaoyao asked the last question. Do you have any money for medicine? Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 732. Want money? Ying Er is happy. Look how much money there is out there now. Living with Shura, starving 3 times a day, and just being able to save one life is considered good, but do you still want to be rich? I have no money. Ying Er was straightforward and tried to reason with the other party seriously. He knew that Xiaoyao had always been a strong person in reasoning. I don't have money to pay for medicine, so I can't treat the disease. This makes sense. Xiaoyao nodded and continued. You can ask your guardian for it. Yang Er was almost desperate. Then you look for it? Aren't you my guardian? Just ask for the medicine money yourself. Xiaoao continued, your guardian doesn't have any money either. Shadow 2. The boss of Wanwu Pavilion, Xiaoao, the third generation of the strongest human race, has power, wealth, status, all at the pinnacle of his existence. You said you have no money? Yang Er didn't know what to say. Then, I don't have money, and my guardian doesn't have money either. This disease, shouldn't we be cured? Yang Er wished he could kneel down and kowtow to Xiaoao. He even started to visit relatives and read family trees. You see, my father befriended Meng Xiang and asked me to accept Meng Xiang as his adoptive father. Although I didn't recognize him, he was at least half an adopted son. I am schizophrenic again, so I am considered two demons, but that's not too much. 2 times 0.5, I am equal to one adopted son of Nightmare. Needless to say, Yang Er's arithmetic is indeed fine. Yang Er, who claimed to be the adopted son of Nightmare, turned around and turned back to the Taoist. Nightmare is Shura's eldest brother, and you are Shura's third brother, so you are not equal to my third uncle. Third uncle, we won't treat the disease anymore, let's go back. The bad woman whispered, shouldn't it be the third uncle? The bad man was anxious, isn't my mentality broken? Wrong. Xiaoao shook his head and began to explain his own reasoning. I'm your guardian and I think you need medical attention. I am your attending doctor. You are indeed crazy and need medicine. I don't have money to pay for the medicine, so. Finally, Xiaoao came to a reasonable conclusion. I should make money to pay for your medicine. Shadow 2. He is so rigorous, I cried to death. Fortunately, Yang Er was crazy. He felt that what Xiaoao said was reasonable, so he had no choice but to follow the other person's train of thought. Then third uncle, make money quickly. Xiaoao shook his head, being a doctor doesn't make money. Yang Er was numb, why? Look at the most powerful seed Shura, although he has not yet become the most powerful, he has already surpassed the most powerful in terms of making money. With Shura's character, he can make money no matter what he does. Yang Er guessed that even if Xiaoao didn't use other abilities, he was still a very strong doctor. Why didn't he make money? Xiaoao patiently explained. They are not sick and do not need medical treatment. Only by medical treatment can they make money. Yang Er understood. They all provide free medical treatment, and I am a paying user. Xiaoao did not answer, but was thinking. He felt that he needed to ask others. Since the Yang Er in front of him is a lunatic, what he says will definitely not work. Xiaoao walked out of the ward, found a random person, and asked. What if being a doctor doesn't make money? The man said angrily. What should I do? What else can I do? Just change my career. Carefree and thoughtful. He walked back to the ward, looked at Yang Er, and said seriously. I can't be a psychiatrist until I can earn enough money for your medication. Thank God, thank God. Second Master Yang is about to cry. Uncle, please earn money slowly. I'm not in a hurry because of my illness. He even took the initiative to explain for himself. Look, I've been crazy for so many years, and I'm still alive and kicking. Xiaoao nodded slightly. The patient is emotionally stable, optimistic, and doing well. Keep it up. Shadow 2. No matter what, Yang Er felt that he was about to be freed. As long as Xiaoao leaves, Yang Er can find a way to escape from this mental hospital, even if he is an ordinary demon. Or just stay here. He is the only patient here anyway. How could he be lucky enough to have an entire mental hospital waiting for him alone? As long as you don't stay by Xiaoao's side, anything you say is fine. Yang Er was really scared. The feeling of oppression given by the strongest Xiaoao is too strong. You have no idea what he's going to do next. An unstable Xiaoao is the biggest hidden danger to the world. After Xiaoao finished speaking, he turned around and left the ward. Less than 5 minutes after Master Ying was happy, someone else walked in. He saw Xiaoao, dressed in Taoist robes, standing in front of him, followed by several nurses who stepped forward to help him untie his restraints. "What are you going to do? Tie me up quickly. I'm a lunatic. I have official proof." As he spoke, the second Master Ying took out more than 1,000 psychiatric appraisal reports from his pocket. These blank papers were piled into a small mountain, and no one else could look at them. An enthusiastic aunt explained for him. "Ying Er, right? Your third uncle helped you go through the discharge procedures. It's not easy for your third uncle. In order to take care of you, he even quit his job." Shadow 2. Before leaving, Auntie did not forget to tell Ying Er. "Listen carefully to your third uncle, he will not harm you." Ying Er wanted to cry but had no tears. Education. Being a psychiatrist for 2 days. When the other party asks, just answer happily. Soon, he found another passerby and asked where it was easier to make money. Xiaoao lived in Nanjiang City for 2 days. He saw that everyone else had ID cards, so he got one too. After leaving the mental hospital, Ying Er followed Xiaoao honestly and asked timidly. "Middle-aged Mediterranean man. How long have you been upon? Co-author, are you here so casual? Work experience? 2 days. No need to ask, I'm sure Wanwu Pavilion. This already exists. Do you have proof of identity?" Shadow 2, who was watching this experience, was stunned. The person in charge of receiving the 2 people was a bald middle-aged man, holding a cigarette and asked. "How long did I say 2 days? No." After inputting all the other parties' information into the computer, the middle-aged man felt that if he could be admitted to Wanwu Pavilion, wouldn't anyone be able to come to Wanwu Pavilion? He doesn't want to listen. Does he have the ability? "Uncle San, where can we make money?" "Okay, how many patients have you seen?" "1." Xiaoao shook his head, "I don't know." Xiaoao's mobile phone sent a text message reminder. Zhang Xiaoao's identity certificate was handed to the other party, but the other party subconsciously did not feel any surprise at the name Zhang Xiaoao. He was completely speechless. Ding. Now that we have the answer, Xiaoao's execution ability has always been full. Soon, he took Ying Er and found the Wanwu Pavilion application office. 43 hours, 45 minutes, and 5 seconds. Now that you have proof of identity, the next step will be much easier. Job number 1. Such methods were unheard of, and Ying Er took a breath of cold air. You have been hired as a formal employee by Wanwu Pavilion. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 733. Ying Er originally thought that everything would be fine once Xiaoao entered the Wanwu Pavilion. Isn't this a closed loop? He never imagined that this was the beginning of his nightmare. After Xiaoao worked in Wanwu Pavilion for an hour, Ying Er noticed something was wrong. It is really fair for the strongest to do business. Xiaoao really sells things worth 10 yuan for 10 yuan. You don't make a penny. Before Ying Er could come up with his idea, Xiaoao took the initiative to stop. He came to a rigorous conclusion. If this continues, I won't be able to earn enough for your medicine. Ying Er nodded wildly, agreeing very much with what the other party said. Ying Er actually wants to ask, you have a pavilion of all things, why don't you just use it? Xiaoyao frowned and asked. You want to ask, I have a pavilion of all things, why don't I just use it? Shadow 2. Is it that obvious? Facing Xiaoyao's question, Yang Er could only nod truthfully. Xiaoyao explained seriously. The things in Wanwu Pavilion belong to Wanwu Pavilion. Ah, this. Although I can't understand Xiaoyao's specific logic. But Yang Er felt that since he was a madman and couldn't understand, the problem didn't seem to be big. If Wanwu Pavilion doesn't work, I have to find another way to make money. Xiaoyao was going to pick up a passerby on the street and ask again. No, third uncle. Yang Er was very discerning and quickly stopped Xiaoyao and said seriously. Uncle San, if you ask outsiders, why not ask me directly? Xiaoyao asked, but you are crazy. Just because I'm crazy doesn't mean every word I say is crazy. Yang Er explained seriously. Although I am crazy, the facts are still facts. When the facts are spoken by a madman, they are still facts. This statement somewhat rises to a philosophical point of view. Carefree and thoughtful. Yang Erguang said it was not enough, and even tried it himself, holding up 3 fingers. For example, I am crazy now, but I say 1 plus 1 equals 3. Everyone knows that 1 plus 1 equals 3. You can't deny this just because I am crazy, right? Xiaoyao corrected, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Shadow 2. Has he made miscalculations all these years? Uncle San. Help me, I'm really crazy. Yang Er was still going crazy, but Xiaoyao felt that what Yang Er said made sense. In front of Xiaoyao, he can still tell which words are true and which words are crazy. Xiaoyao pondered for a moment and then asked. How do you think I should earn money for medicine? Yang Er's condition improved a bit and he naturally replied. To make money, either find Lao Zhao or fourth master. Lao Zhao naturally refers to Zhao Qian. Fourth master, needless to say, the human race's unique and powerful seed is Shura. Zhao Qian, no. Xiaoyao shook his head and said instead. I can't get through Shura's place. Shadow 2. What happened to his fourth master? Where is the place that I can't even go to? The mighty abyss. His mind was in a mess, but for a moment, Master Yang regained consciousness. He felt that things were getting a bit big and seemed to be getting out of control. The strongest human race is free and easy. No one can tell the current situation clearly, and no one can figure out the future direction. Shura didn't know what was going on and slipped into the abyss of the strongest. No, fourth master is usually very sensible and cherishes his life. Damn it, how did the human race end up like this? You have to do something. Faced with an unprecedented sense of responsibility and crisis, Yang Eryi decided to take the first step, which is also a crucial step. Then, Yang Er went crazy again. He danced like a circus clown. You can do whatever you like, and be whatever you think you are. After hearing Yang Er's answer, Xiaoyao was thoughtful. A white cloud fell from the sky, landed in front of Xiaoyao, and condensed into a mirror. In the mirror, Xiaoyao saw a Taoist priest. Xiaoyao nodded slightly. 10 minutes later. On the streets of Nanjiang City, there is an extra fortune-telling stall with a flag. Tell someone's fortune, 5 yuan a time. The person who helps people tell fortunes is an ordinary middle-aged Taoist priest, wearing a simple Taoist robe without any patterns or water patterns, only a few white clouds embroidered on it. If you look carefully, you can see a looming butterfly on the Taoist sleeve. There was not only a Taoist on the stall, but also a madman. This madman is like a junior Taoist. When he is idle, he looks for food on the ground. When he is crazy, he pinches his throat and talks to himself in 2 voices. 10 minutes after the fortune-telling stall appeared, the city defense department arrived. A Pequot king explained politely to the other party. Sir, fortune telling is not allowed here. If a prophecy war king needs promotion, he can report to the city defense department. Obviously, the other party regarded Xiaoao as a hidden master. Although Xiaoao looks ordinary, he is still a war king at his weakest. Starting yesterday, a group of strong men suddenly came to Nanjiang City's urban defense department. With the peak war king as the base, the war god served as the team leader, and the powerful 9th level war god led the team, taking over the entire city defense of Nanjiang City. For a time, many people in Nanjiang City were confused, thinking that the demon sect was going to make some big move in Nanjiang City. After these powerful men arrived, they did nothing else, just like the normal city defense department, guarding the peace of Nanjiang City. The peak war king was stunned and quickly apologized. Then you are a strong man of the god of war level. What the hell is this? I became the god of war. Fortunately, there have been enough strange things recently. The peak warrior king was not surprised. He looked at the Taoist again and said with an apologetic smile. After thinking about it, the peak war king didn't say what he said next. The peak war king glanced at the opponent's sign and said casually, "Okay, don't say anything more. Anyway, according to the rules of the city defense department, you can't place anything here." Xiaoao pointed to the words on the flag, "I want to collect money." "Sorry, I made a mistake. You can set up stalls here, but currently this is the only street that can set up stalls. Can you tell me your fortune?" Urgent notice, Taoist priests are allowed to set up stalls and tell fortunes on number 3 road in the city center. Look at how embarrassed this is. Let's do this. I am not a prophecy war king. Even the master of the Oro looked at his hands in disbelief and muttered absent-mindedly. He didn't take it seriously. Anyway, he just wanted to have fun with the 5 UN thing. The city defense department in front of Xiaoao was changed from a warrior general to a peak warrior king. After a few minutes, promise to complete the mission. The peak war king waved his hand and said angrily. Xiaoao shook his head again, no. In the words of training instructor Xue Meng, their mission this time is to make every citizen of Nanjiang City feel that there is true love everywhere in the world. Peak war king? That's for sure. After the bloody sledgehammer struck once, no one had any doubts. Several war gods raised questions on the spot. After all, it would be a bit weird for so many powerful people to be thrown into Nanjiang City. How do you think I can break through to the god of war? The peak war king was confused, but his attitude was still very good. After all, they had received strict emergency training. Just as the peak war king was speaking, a new notification came from his headset. Everyone has only one sentence left. He guessed that wherever the Taoist priest in front of him went, he could set up a stall. An extremely powerful aura swept across the entire street. The Taoist replied casually, "First of all." The peak war king sat opposite the Taoist and asked casually. After listening to the other party's words, Xiaoao shook his head. So. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjio Old Thief. Chapter 734. The birth of a god of war in the human race is naturally a gratifying event. The news of the god of war's breakthrough disturbed many people. Terrifying auras rose up from the 4 directions of southeast, northwest, and suppressed the movement. The god of war, who was at the center of the storm, was suppressed by the aftermath of these auras. His body sank, his face was ferocious, his face was red from the pain, and he could not say a word. Compared with these auras, the god of war is like an ant seeing a giant elephant, incomparably small and insignificant. The god of war. The weakest is also the combat power of the god of war. Like Xue Meng, although he is still a 9th level war god in name, in fact, everyone uses him as a heavenly war god. Among the 4 auras, Xue Meng is not the strongest. The King of War's eyes were full of shock and horror, like a stormy sea, unable to calm down. You must know that there are only a few heaven-reaching war gods in the human race. 4 people appear here. Doesn't that mean that the human race has given up all the strategic buffer space it can strive for and piled all the powerful people in Nanjiang City? What are they going to do? Countless thoughts appeared in the God of War's mind, and then quickly disappeared. Because a madman appeared before him. Second Master Ying was stimulated by the aura of these all-powerful war gods, and he sobered up a lot. He remembered that he was actually quite strong. For example, he is very skilled in sealing the memory of the God of War. A black light flashed through, and the God of War, who had just broken through, saw his eyes darken and fell straight back. The bad woman whispered, "Bad thing, you won't kill people, right? How can it be?" Second Master Ying retorted, "I have even sealed your memory more than 100 times, how could I make a mistake?" Bad woman. Bad guy, I'll fight you. Just as the bad woman made a desperate gesture, a black light flashed before her eyes. She looked at the God of War on the ground and asked softly, "Bad thing, you won't kill people, right?" After the second conversation, the second Master Ying is obviously more experienced. "Well, I accidentally killed him, and you are fully responsible." Bad woman. Not long after Ying Yi took action, a Loki van passed by. The moment the van ran over the God of War disappeared and was taken away. Nothing seemed to have happened on the streets, and the peace of the past had returned. The second Master Ying, who finally regained consciousness, went crazy again. Third uncle. Third uncle. Second Master Ying looked at the $5 in the bowl and said with some disgust, "This doesn't look like a fortune teller, it looks like a beggar." Xiaoao shook his head and said in confusion, "I don't look like a fortune teller, I am a fortune teller." His second Master Ying was unable to refute for a while. He had no choice but to change the topic and asked instead, "Uncle San, if you just tell fortunes like this, won't it cost too much?" Xiaoao did not deny the fact that Ying Er called him third uncle. After all, his current identity is that of Shadow 2's guardian. Xiaoao shook his head again. "I just tell people's fortunes, but the questions they ask don't need to be calculated. How does a King of War break through the God of War? This kind of thing needs Xiaoao to figure out silently. That would be a bit too contemptuous of Xiaoao." "Hey. I understand." Ying Er thought of something else, his eyes glowed. "Uncle San is the most fair in doing things. If you spend 5 yuan, you can only talk about it for 5 yuan. Not even an extra dollar will do." Xiaoao nodded slightly, this sentence is correct. However, in Xiaoao's eyes, the value of a few words of advice to the King of War is not much different from 5 yuan. The lunatic continued to set up a stall on the street with the Taoist. In the whole afternoon, the Taoist earned 5 yuan. In the evening, the Taoist put away his stall and started on his way with the madman. The madman was on all fours, twisting and crawling on the ground, as if he had opened a dragon's spine. "Uncle San, where are we going?" The Taoist replied casually. "After get off work, go back to your apartment and cook." Observing this period of time, Xiaoao knew that most people would get off work at 5 o'clock. On the way back, the two passed by a high-rise building. This is the Wanwu Pavilion Industry. There is an electronic screen hanging on the building. Text is constantly scrolling on the electronic screen, accompanied by the host's explanation. Xiaoao stopped. The madman also stopped. Xiaoao raised his head slightly and looked at the electronic screen. The second Master Ying also raised his head like a happy man. He forgot that he was originally lying on the ground. He accidentally raised his head at nearly 180 degrees, and his cervical spine was like rubber, twisting to an exaggerated degree. The ant on the side took a look, didn't even scream, just rolled her eyes and passed out. Before the ant could fall down, two men in black rushed out from the surrounding crowd and took the ant away. The second Master Ying saw clearly what was on the electronic screen. It was a very common message, summarizing Shura's achievements since he was born. News like this is no longer news. Xiaoao stood there and watched, thoughtfully. In the sky not far from the Taoist, a huge gold coin was suspended above the white clouds, covering its whereabouts. On the gold coin, Zhao Qian had a sad face and kept sighing. He was spinning in circles anxiously, muttering. "What can we do, what can we do?" I said, "Uncle Zhao, please rest first." Xuemen yawned and gave advice to the other party. "If it doesn't work out, I'll go find my second father and ask him to release Shura first." Since Shura was born, Xuemen developed a new habit. Don't be in a hurry and let Shura go. Don't tell me, this trick is really effective. As long as Shura takes action, everything will be fine. So, at what cost? Xuemen looked at his bare wool and felt that he didn't need to pay any price at all. As long as he starts to mess up, he is invincible. I've been there a long time ago. How could Zhao Qian be able to sit still when such a big thing happened? Zhao Qian said helplessly. Wu Hen said, he can't release Shura, but he can put me in. Xuemen. Okay, it's pretty seamless. Not long after he and Ying Er separated, Zhao Qian was worried that something was wrong with him, so he simply hid himself and followed him. Who would have thought that I would actually find Xiaoao through Ying Er? Man, I found it. What's next? Zhao Qian is numb. Why don't you run down and ask your boss? Are you taking a walk? No one has ever encountered the situation like Xiaoao. The second father had no choice but to make another plan in Xuemeng's mind. Then look for my eldest father. Logically speaking, nightmares should not be used until the most critical moment. But isn't Xiaoao's state the most critical moment? Zhao Qian's brows furrowed even more tightly. I've looked for it, but no reply. Xuemeng didn't quite understand the true state of the nightmare. That remnant soul will only show up when he wants to show up. Xuemeng was happy and relaxed. That doesn't mean that my eldest father thinks there's nothing wrong with it. Why? If only it were as simple as Xuemeng said, that would be great. While Zhao Qian was struggling, Lao Yan's voice came from the communicator beside him. This matter no longer needs to be described in terms of priority. The top priority of the human race now is freedom. Lao Lan is naturally worried about this matter. After some careful consideration, Lan Lao gave his own reference opinions. Actually, Ying Er's method is feasible. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 735. Ying Er's method. Xuemeng was stunned. What can that guy do? Zhao Qian frowned, his face full of doubts. This method, can it really work? According to the second master's idea, Xiaoao is living an ordinary life, so they will also live an ordinary life, and they will meet in the end. From a theoretical perspective, this stuff makes no sense. Even the most third-rate internet article writer cannot write such a bloody plot. It just happened. Xiaoao is working as a psychiatrist, Ying Er is working as a mental patient. Zhao Qian shook his head slightly. If we don't deliberately contact my boss, the probability of meeting him should be low. Of course he understood what Lan Lao meant, it was completely random and there should be no deliberate intention. Because only Xiaoao knows what Xiaoao is going through right now. If they deliberately do something, they fall into the trap of cliché. But there is no other way at the moment, and Zhao Qian can't come up with any other ideas. Let's treat a dead horse as a living horse, doctor. Zhao Qian looked at Xuemeng and warned. We must do things according to the logic and abilities of ordinary people. Just as Xuemeng was about to nod, he staggered and fell from the gold coin, hitting the ground and making a big hole. When Zhao Qian dug him out, Xuemeng had only one question. According to the abilities of ordinary people, should I die? Zhao Qian. He suddenly discovered that the city had a magical charm that brought everyone's IQ to Ying Er's level. Zhao Qian said angrily. Yes, a normal person would definitely die if he fell like this. Xuemeng touched his chin with his hand and said in deep thought. Then you can only help me deal with my funeral affairs. It's up to you, Lao Zhao. After saying that, Xuemeng tilted his head and lost his breath. Even if the god of war comes to check, he will conclude that Xuemeng is a dead man. Of course, he didn't really die. Zhao Qian? He was reaching the limit of his endurance. If something goes wrong with your boss, these guys will go crazy. Zhao Qian looked at Xuemeng who was still in the pit, and an idea came to his mind, why not just bury this guy here? This is a logical idea for ordinary people. Call. Xuemeng suddenly opened his eyes, exhaled, and said seriously. Old Zhao, I want a grand burial. After saying that, he tilted his head again and even stuck out a piece of his tongue. Ah, I'm dead. Zhao Qian was completely speechless. He did not dig up Xuemeng, nor did he bury Xuemeng here. Penniless Zhao Qian took to the streets, ready to start living like an ordinary person. An hour later, Zhao Qian returned to the scene with an excavator. Right here, my nephew fell from the plane and died. Help me dig him out. Okay, boss Zhao. The master of the excavator works extremely hard. The millionaire boss Zhao next to him is really rich and spends money without blinking an eye. When Xuemeng was completely dug out, Zhao Qian had become a billionaire. He made a phone call to Su Qingfeng. Old Su, come here and help Xuemeng take care of his funeral. Pavilion Master Zhao, it's against the rules. Su Qingfeng apparently also received the news from Lan Lao and was ready to act according to the plan. Since we want to live an ordinary life, why should Su Qingfeng listen to Zhao Qian? Zhao Qian's next words blocked all Su Qingfeng's words. I'll give you 500. Su Qingfeng asked tentatively, eternal gold coins. Zhao Qian, who was already in a bad mood, said angrily, dragon coins. What the hell? 500 dragon coins, do you expect me to hire a 9th level war god to take care of someone else's funeral? Su Qingfeng was about to have a fit, but Zhao Qian's words made him lose his temper. No money, do you have a place to stay tonight? Su Qingfeng. Boss Zhao, give me 50 first and I'll take a taxi over. Half an hour later, a panting Su Qingfeng ran to the scene of Xuemeng's death. Zhao Qian looked at Su Qingfeng who was sweating profusely and made sure that the other party had not used any abilities and really regarded him as an ordinary person. For a moment, I felt a little funny. Zhao Qian asked, didn't I give you money to take a taxi? Su Qingfeng wiped the sweat from his forehead and said confidently. If I run over here, I'll save 50, why don't I take a taxi? After resting for a moment, Su Qingfeng looked at Xuemeng, whose bones were still cold, and sighed. Brother, you were so good, why did you die? After speaking, he looked at Zhao Qian and said, how much do you plan to compensate my brother? Zhao Qian had only one response. Roll. He threw 50,000 dragon coins to Su Qingfeng and asked him to continue messing around with Xuemeng. As for Zhao Qian himself, he needs to find other ways to find his boss. After counting the money, Su Qingfeng carried Xuemeng on his back and walked to the nearest funeral parlor to prepare for the funeral arrangements. Today, another person died. Xiaoao nodded, indicating that he understood. Su Qingfeng. Xiaoao thought for a while and quoted a reasonable number, 10 yuan. He even took the initiative to speak and said a few words. Shadow 2. Sitting next to Xuemeng's corpse, Su Qingfeng began to count the money and said casually. Just 10 yuan. Two figures appeared outside the funeral parlor. They were a Taoist priest and a lunatic beside him. Second Master Ying nodded. According to third uncle, this can be done. Night. Live. After death, if special means are not used, the soul cannot be preserved, and the so-called rituals are ineffective. They are more of a psychological comfort for the living. Xiaoyao can earn enough medical expenses as soon as possible, and Mr. Ying will be out of trouble as soon as possible. Xiaoyao thought for a while and corrected, crying in mourning is unlucky. Third uncle, we are here to perform rituals, so we can't accept it so cheaply. Ying was carrying a bag and all kinds of props, but he didn't know where he got them. Just as Mr. Ying was about to go to his master to beg for more money. I know. I know. Xuemeng made a weak sound in his throat. There was a faint firelight at the door of the funeral home. After listening to Xiaoyao's words, Ying felt like he didn't understand anything. The corpse is fake, the corpse is talking. Brother, if you have anything else to say, just ask me, I will do everything I can. As a Taoist, it is reasonable to tell people's fortunes and perform rituals. He only cares about one thing. Xiaoyao glanced at the coffin and shook his head. The Taoist walked to the coffin. Uncle San, you just earned 10 yuan, and I'll go mourn and ask for good luck. My master will give me some money, can I take it? Uncle San, how much do you plan to charge? The coffin was only a little thicker than paper, with electronic screens on all sides playing various music in a loop, which was very cool. You stabbed 2 Shura villains and burned them for me. Second Master Ying rolled his eyes and asked tentatively. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 736. Yu. The dead have become living horses. A wild horse ran out of the funeral home and disappeared into the night. Su Qingfeng. He wanted to chase him, but even if he used his powerful 9th level God of War ability, he couldn't catch up with Xuemeng. You don't have the ability, you know. More importantly, Su Qingfeng realized something terrible. He really met Xiaoyao. Xuemeng can't change into a horse, but what he does after turning into a horse is secondary. The most important thing is the Taoist in front of me. What to do next? Countless thoughts flashed through Su Qingfeng's mind, and he was stunned on the spot. The Taoist glanced at the mess and shook his head. Gone. Since there are no dead people, there is no need to perform rituals. No need to do anything, it's time to go home and sleep. Second Master Ying followed the Taoist while winking at Su Qingfeng crazily. Su Qingfeng is also very desperate. Xiaoyao is here to perform rituals, and he will not perform rituals if he is not dead. What can Su Qingfeng do? Kill yourself now to cheer up everyone. Please stay. Su Qingfeng said the words, but his mind was still blank. Fortunately, Second Master Ying has 2 brains after all, and he can think faster than ordinary people, so he continued. There are still dead people in your family who need to perform rituals. Su Qingfeng. With the public security in Nanjiang City, it would be difficult for Su Qingfeng to find a dead person. Although I don't know what happened. But Su Qingfeng realized one thing, Xiaoyao regarded himself as an ordinary person, and kept Ying by his side, setting up a stall during the day and doing things at night. Is this a lack of money? Su Qingfeng stepped forward bravely and said with a smile. Look, please come to our house to do something, always express your gratitude, the carriage fee, yes, the carriage fee. The Taoist shook his head and said, walk. After opening his mind, Su Qingfeng's vision instantly broadened. We don't need the carriage fee, but we have to accept the tea fee. In order to prevent the Taoist from rejecting him again, Su Qingfeng picked up a teapot and poured it into Master Ying's mouth. Gilug gilug. Second Master Ying was so confused that he was fed so much water that he almost ate the teapot as well. The Taoist is thoughtful. Seeing that Xiaoao didn't refuse, Su Qingfeng started to take out money, and more than 40,000 yuan was placed in front of second Master Ying. That's all I have. I rented a coffin for Xuemeng for 3,000, bought a small box for 1,999, and 3,000 for funeral expenses. The rest are here. Second Master Ying looked at Xiaoao. Third uncle, can I accept this money? Xiaoao asked back. Is this pot of tea worth the money for you to drink? Second Master Ying's eyes lit up and he nodded frantically. It's worth it? It's so worth it? I've never had such delicious tea in my life. Su Qingfeng made arrangements for Xuemeng's funeral. He never thought that anyone would come. There were no arrangements for tea or snacks. The teapot was left behind by a previous family. It had been there for who knows how many days, and there were still tiny protein flying objects in the tea leaves. For this thing, Mr. Ying can be unconscionable and say that it is worth more than 40,000 yuan. Visible. After spending a long time with Shura, even the second Master Ying will be changed. Xiaoao nodded. Then take it. After saying that, he left with Ying Er. On this trip, the ritual was not completed, but I earned more than 40,000 yuan when I left. The Taoist walked under the dim light. Behind him, the second master was counting money and chanting. Third uncle, let's move to a bigger house. The 2 bedrooms and 1 living room will accommodate the 3 of us. It's too crowded. Su Qingfeng was left alone, doubting his life. After Xiaoao was out of sight, Su Qingfeng came to his senses and quickly called Boss Zhao. Boss Zhao! Boss Zhao! Su Qingfeng told the other party truthfully about his previous experiences. Zhao Qian is already numb. Ying Er goes crazy, can meet Xiaoao. Xuemeng pretends to be dead so he can meet Xiaoao. If there's something wrong with my head, I can't refresh this task. Okay, I get it. Zhao Qian hung up the phone and sighed. He knew in his heart that this time, the lunatic Ying Er might have got it right. Only by going through life, old age, illness, and death like ordinary people can we have the chance to meet Xiaoao. Birth, old age, sickness, and death. An idea flashed in Zhao Qian's mind and he captured something. As the second in command of Wanwu Pavilion, Zhao Qian actually knows Xiaoao very well. After all, there are only a few people who have a lot of contact with Xiaoao on weekdays. Zhao Qian was sure of one thing, Xiaoao definitely didn't come to the human world just to see. If you want to see the human world, for Xiaoao, it doesn't matter where you look. Is he coming to Earth for a walk? Zhao Qian, who had vaguely touched the truth, became more and more clear-minded. What is there in the world? Birth, old age, sickness, and death. Shadow 2 is illness, Xuemeng is death. Birth, old age, these 2 key points. Zhao Qian quickly grabbed his cell phone and started making calls. By the obstetrics and gynecology departments of all hospitals in Nanjiang City, as well as nursing homes and nursing communities. Zhao Qian felt that he would probably meet his boss this time. The next day, in Nanjiang City, a quarrel broke out in front of a hair transplant institution. We can do fortune-telling for 5 yuan a time, fake weddings and funerals, and all the work of a Taoist priest. We can cure all diseases. Xievenan hurried out and found a Taoist priest walking on the street, a lunatic. From the loudspeaker, a seemingly crazy sissy shouted at the top of her voice. But in the past few days, he has been guarding near Nanjiang City, and yesterday he received a strange order. He looked familiar to both of them, but he couldn't recognize each other's true identity. You say bald again. 1, 3, 99, 4 They are all still alive and well, why do they say I am bald? Sievenin walked on the street, comforting himself. What really moved Sievenin was what the other party said was a cure-all for all diseases. This voice sounds familiar. A lot of anger hurts the body, a lot of anger hurts the body. He passed by a wig shop, walked in by mistake, and started choosing wigs. The two sides exchanged passionate blows for half an hour before the climax of the game ended. What I hate most in this life is when others say he is bald. Let Sievenin enter Nanjiang City and live like an ordinary person. Unless the human race is in danger of annihilation, don't take action. Not to mention hair transplants. He had only one request, good hair. The middle-aged man became angry, pointed at the position above his head, and fought hard based on it. This baldness can probably be considered a disease. The hair transplant doctor was also very annoyed. He is Sievenin, who has traveled across the abyss, is invincible below the demon god, and is the indomitable war god of the human race. You have a bald head and have hair transplanted. Where can I get your hair? Sievenin is obsessed with hair transplantation. Because the strength is too strong, the scalp has developed the strongest defense and cannot grow hair at all. Hello, Taoist priest, is it really possible to grow hair? The bald Sievenin looked at the weird duo in front of him with suspicion in his eyes and asked tentatively. If he were an ordinary person, the thing he would most want to do would probably be a hair transplant. Hiss. At this time, a horn sounded outside the door, attracting Sievenin's attention. Harmful to the body and prone to hair loss. I think you are deliberately looking for trouble, right? This man had amazing bones, an extraordinary appearance, and simple clothes, but he was very generous with his actions. A middle-aged man was furious and cursed. Didn't you say that hair transplantation is possible? I brought all the toilet advertisements. Life, Sievenin has no problem. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjaya Old Thief. Chapter 737. Hair growth. Yang Er looked at the bald man in front of him and felt that he looked familiar. The other party also looked at him the same way. I don't know when a force enveloped the entire Nanjiang city, quietly changing something. When Su Qingfeng met Yang Er and Xiao Ao yesterday, he could still recognize their identities. At the moment, Sievenin is stronger than Su Qingfeng, but he cannot recognize the two of them. In other words, the stronger the strength, the greater the influence of this mysterious force. Su Qingfeng escaped. The Taoist looked at Sievenin and asked, "Why do you want to grow hair?" Sievenin sighed and said helplessly, "I used to have hair, but now I don't." Xiao Ao continued to ask, "You were weak before, but now, you are still weak. Do you want to change back to before?" Standing in front of Xiao Ao, there seemed to be no difference between level 1 Sievenin and level 994 Sievenin. Sievenin shook his head, "Of course I don't want to." The Taoist was a little confused. Hair. Since you don't want to go back to your weaker self, why do you want to go back to your hairy self? This is the same thing. Sievenin frowned and said with a sad face, "You look good with hair, but you don't look good without hair." The Taoist continued to ask, "Who is watching?" Sievenin was stunned. Others see it? Do other people's opinions really matter to Sievenin? In a sense, he is already the pinnacle existence in the world. Super strong, no worries about life, clinging to the lap of the human race. There are no powerful seeds that can harvest wool all day long. He became famous late and missed the bloody battles of the year. Although his combat power and realm were high, he never experienced any unbearable pain. Among the many powerful people in the human race, Sievenin's happiness index is definitely at the top. If he takes a few steps forward and reaches level 1000, he can ascend on the spot and go to the upper world. Other people's opinions are no longer important to Siavanen. He said blankly, I can see for myself. The Taoist was silent. The madman moved. The madman brought a mirror from nowhere, jumped in front of Siavanen, and slapped it in his face. Then look. Siavanen looked at his bald self in the mirror. His scalp turned black bit by bit, and hair sprouted one after another. Soon he had a head full of black hair. Suddenly, Siavanen felt that this hair was a bit annoying to him. He was used to seeing himself bald, but he didn't expect that he would look so ugly with hair. Siavanen raised his hand and wiped it lightly. Countless black hairs fell off, and he became that bald head again, but his old friends who had followed him for many years, such as 13, 99, and 44, were still there. Siavanen let it go. The moment he truly let go. In the void, the door of the eternal temple slowly emerged, as if there was a force that wanted to lead Siavanen away. The Taoist glanced at the door. Snapped. Just like a bubble bursting, the shadow disappeared, as if it had never appeared. When Siavanen came back to his senses, the Taoist and the madman had disappeared. In front of Siavanen, there was only a mirror suspended in the air and hair on the ground. Seeing himself with improved strength, the corners of Siavanen's mouth trembled slightly, and a terrifying suspicion emerged in his heart. He has already met Xiaoao. Why, I have no impression at all. Taoists and lunatics are still walking on the streets. However, this time, it was a little different from before. When people pass by the Taoist, they turn into all kinds of strange animals. Half a meter away from the Taoist, everything returned to normal. No one can notice the difference. These two people were walking on the streets of Nanjiang City, clearly visible among the crowd, but no one noticed them. Just when Ying Eryi and Xiaoao continued to play the strongest house, Zhao Qian contacted Su Qingfeng again. Old Su, there is one thing that you must be mentally prepared for. Zhao Qian was very serious. Su Qingfeng looked serious and listened attentively. Just this morning, we have enough evidence to prove that Siavanen should have met my boss. Zhao Qian's voice was full of bitterness, as if he was telling something that he couldn't believe. But Siavanen didn't recognize my boss, nor did he recognize Ying Er. Su Qingfeng exclaimed, how could it be possible? That duo was so obvious. Besides, as long as Siavanen is not blind, even if he can't see the problem with Ying Er, as a fan of Xiaoao, can't he even recognize Xiaoao? Su Qingfeng's face was full of questions. How could this happen? Immediately, a bigger question arose in his heart. Why is Zhao Qian telling him this? Even if something really happened, Zhao Qian's priority would not be himself. Su Qingfeng was well aware of his own worth among the 9th-level war gods, and would never humiliate himself. Zhao Qian solved his doubts for him. We guess that the boss's talent is about to awaken in the final step. The gift of freedom, my heart is happy. All SSS-level talents, when awakened for the last time, will have a passive effect similar to indiscriminate release. This is true for Nightmare, and so is Wuhan. That white horse, if it has nothing to do on weekdays, will wander on its own in the long river of time. If Baiju wants to appear in this world, he needs to make a special trip. Few people know that there is no 9th awakening for Xiaoao's talent. Because, he hasn't figured out that issue yet. In the end, is it Dai Meng Xiaoao, or Xiaoao Mendi? Only when you figure it out can you take the final step. In the past, this kind of secret was only known to the top human race executives, and Su Qingfeng was naturally not among them. At this time, Zhao Qian suddenly mentioned this matter, which really felt a bit sudden to him. Su Qingfeng only felt that one head and two were as big as each other, so he asked bluntly. What can I do? Zhao Qian said slowly. Following Lao Ian's command, we tested it and found that when my boss's talent passively takes effect, beings below the ninth level god of war have no ability to resist and will directly enter an unconscious state. This was the strange scene Ying Er saw on the street before. Zhao Qian turned and said, "As for ninth level war gods and above, because they are too strong, they will be affected first, and they will not recognize my boss at all." After hearing this, Su Qingfeng probably knew what the other party was looking for. "Old Su," Zhao Qian said helplessly. "We now need a most special ninth level god of war. He must be strong enough to resist the passive range of his talent, but not too strong so that his cognition will not be affected by my boss. In other words, they need a ninth level god of war whose upper and lower limits are extremely close. High EQ, the most special ninth level god of war. Low EQ, the weakest ninth level god of war." Su Qingfeng. When these words were spoken, Zhao Qian himself felt funny. The hope of saving the human race depends on you, Lao Su. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 738. Can we rely on Lao Su to save the human race? This sentence is as funny as the most powerful person's card is Shura. Everyone is a 1,000-year-old rookie. What are you talking about Crazy Thursday? After hanging up the phone with Zhao Qian, Lao Su fell into silence. He didn't know what he could do, but since he was pushed to this point, he had to do something, right? According to Zhao Qian, the people who currently interact with Xiaoao are divided into two categories. One category is Xuemeng, Xievenan, and Ying Er, who are ordinary people and let themselves go. Inadvertently, I met Xiaoao. The other category is the City Defense Department. With Second Master Ying around, Xiaoao would inevitably have to deal with the City Defense Department. Su Qingfeng thought about it and decided to try his luck at the City Defense Department. Before doing this, he thought carefully about what else he wanted to do. Be a normal person. Su Qingfeng's previous wish was to work as a barbecue chef on the beach. Su Qingfeng took out his wallet. Only then did he remember that he had given all his money to Ying Er. Although he had no money, Su Qingfeng's hands-on skills were not bad. He found a suitable bamboo pole and went to the river to fish out a fishing line to make a simple fishing pole to catch some food. The breeze blew across the water, and Su Qingfeng felt drowsy. He felt that he was probably going to be an Air Force officer today. Aha! Took the bait. The bamboo pole in Su Qingfeng's hand bent into a terrifying arc. Obviously, he had caught something big. Even though he tried his best, he couldn't pull the opponent to the shore. Instead, the bamboo pole made a crisp sound. Boom! Su Qingfeng. Just as he was about to find another bamboo pole, a horse came out of the river. There are horses, hippopotamuses in the river. Is this reasonable? This makes sense. Su Qingfeng's previous fishhook hung from the horse's mouth, and half a bamboo pole hung from the other end of the line. Fierce horse. One person and one horse, looking at each other speechlessly. Su Qingfeng sighed, ignored the fishing, and began to communicate with the other party seriously. Have you been like this since you turned into a horse? The fierce horse nodded. Su Qingfeng cast a sympathetic look. Is there a way to resolve it? The fierce horse nodded again. Any solution? The fierce horse raised its front hooves and shrugged its shoulders. Obviously, he didn't know either. Under normal circumstances, Xuemeng should have recovered a long time ago. However, Nanjiang City is considered to be within the influence of Xiaoao's talent. And Xuemeng is one of the top strong men, so he is severely restricted in this range. Leaving Nanjiang City may be a way. But after leaving, it may not be so easy to enter Nanjiang City again. Zhao Qian and the others have done experiments and found that beings above the 9th level god of war cannot return after leaving Nanjiang City. On the contrary, other ordinary people are not affected in any way. Su Qingfeng looked at Xuemeng with eyes full of pity. Then you can only do this forever. Menma shook his head again and said. Sometimes I go for a ride. Su Qingfeng. You're so good at talking. Nonsense, I've been able to speak since I was 1 year old. Xuemeng also felt strange. Why do you think I can't speak? Take a ride. Su Qingfeng's questions are increasing. What is a ride? I've seen people driving Ferraris for a ride, but I've never seen anyone riding a horse. However, Xuemeng pretended to be serious and pretended to be the Riddler. Calculate the time, it's almost time. Just when Su Qingfeng was about to ask for more information, his eyes blurred, and something seemed to flash by. Xuemeng also disappeared. Only the shadow of a horse was left on the ground. Su Qingfeng began to doubt his life. What kind of things are he encountering recently? If I guard Xuemeng's shadow, can I wait until he comes back? In ancient times, there was a carving boat in search of a sword. Now there is a shadow waiting for the horse. Su Qingfeng is only sure of one thing. This Nanjiang city is getting weirder and weirder. Xuemeng was as free as the wind at this moment. A white colt led the way, and Xuemeng ran wildly behind. As he ran, he shouted out of breath. I told you that second dad is talented, please run slower. It's different from what Su Qingfeng thought. Xuemeng did not parkour in Nanjiang city. Instead, follow Baiju and walk together in the long river of time. He didn't know where the other party was taking him. Anyway, Xuemeng didn't have much chance to refuse. Baiju suddenly appeared in front of him and ran away with him without explaining anything. Xuemeng couldn't run anymore, so he was kicked back to Nanjiang city by Baiju. After you have had enough rest, you will be invited to parkour again. Xuemeng couldn't survive a single day of this amazing career. However, Xuemeng did not gain anything. His talent and strength are among the best among his peers, and he is unique. It's a pity that man's calculation is not as good as God's calculation. Xuemeng bumped into Wu Han when he was awakening his talent. The Beiju in front of him was the SSS level talent who had chosen Wu Han first. Baiju, who has awakened for the 9th time, is actually not very strong in terms of combat ability alone. All SSS level talents are not simple combat power blessings. He knew that it was either a blessing or a curse, and Shura couldn't escape it. Yo! Did my second father bring you here? You follow the instructions on this diagram and draw the sword from this angle. Cut me. Just in time, you're here, do me a favor. Xuemeng frowned, a little confused. Trapped in a sword prison by more than 100,000 sword energies, Ye Bai still had time to joke around. Hallucination. It must be an illusion. This time, he persisted the longest. Xuemeng rolled his eyes and almost fainted. Xuemeng, long time no see. Xuemeng asked, why draw the sword? With Beiju here and Wu Han in the battle, he can realize the sword at will and use 10,000 swords in an instant. Ye Bai pointed at himself and said seriously. If this handwriting was not from his second father, who else could it be? Who would have thought that? Ye Bai shook his head. The fierce horse's front hooves softened and it knelt down directly on the ground. Xuemeng followed the white horse and ran for who knows how long. Brother, do you still remember that you are a mage? Ye Bai's fingertips were wrapped with sword energy, and he drew a 3D three-dimensional diagram, which was a miniature version of the sword prison, and it was quite charming. Shura said he didn't understand. Xuemeng. The sword energy is traceless, the sword moves are traceless, and the sword prison is traceless. He could only stand up, look at Shura in the sword prison, and asked helplessly. Xuemeng. What else can you do? What's even scarier about them is the auxiliary function. I'm overtired and hallucinating. I still haven't figured out what the sword prison is all about. Ye Bai outlined a sequence and method for using the sword for Xuemeng. Xuemeng thought carefully and came to a reliable conclusion, Shura was probably hacked to death. It's not the new year yet, why are you starting to celebrate the new year? A familiar and frightening voice came from in front of Xuemeng. Finally, Baiju stopped. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 739. Kill Shura? Is there such a good thing? Xuemeng was a little moved for a moment, but he was also afraid that there was some kind of Krypton gold trap. But Xuemeng then thought about it, I have no money, so what else do I have to be afraid of? As long as he accepts his poverty, Xuemeng will be invincible. Over the course of time, Xuemeng was gradually less affected by Xiaoao and soon returned to his human form. He swung his sledgehammer, looked at Ye Bai, and asked curiously. Really? Right. Ye Bai nodded and explained. I'm not asking you to slash casually. You have learned this sword unknown. I am a guest in my dream, right? According to Ye Bai's understanding of his second brother, every sword he learned would be taught to Xuemeng. To a certain extent, Xuemeng is really fierce. Wilhen learned more than 100,000 swords in his life, and Xuemeng learned more than 30,000 swords. This achievement alone is unparalleled in the world. As long as Xueju, Wilhen, Lan Bangxian, and Ye Bai are put aside, Xuemeng is the well-deserved number one sword in the world. Xuemeng nodded. Learned. He immediately felt a little strange and asked curiously. This sword is actually useless unless. To be precise, this sword move has no effect other than causing the enemy to hallucinate dreams at certain moments. Only by combining it with dreams come true and combining talent fusion skills can you have unexpected effects. Hiss. Xuemeng took a deep breath and looked at Ye Bai with a little more pity in his eyes. Have you ever seen my eldest father? If that's the case, I really want to laugh. Ha 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 ha, Shura, you have today too. Xuemeng grimaced, trying his best not to laugh out loud. Ye Bai, who was trapped in the sword prison, rolled his eyes. He would not be able to pluck De Menzies' wool now. If I tell you to chop, just chop. Why is there so much nonsense? Hurry up, the sooner I go out, the sooner I can go out. Ye Bai looked at the sword prison around him with an unkind expression and uncertain eyes. After sitting here for several days, Ye Bai's simulation score was lower than 10 points every time. This sword prison cannot be broken by him at all. The most important thing is that Ye Bai noticed that something was wrong. You know, there are more than 100,000 sword energy produced by Wilhen here. If Ye Bai could really break through the sword prison in front of him, his combat power would be comparable to the strongest at his peak. Even if the second brother tests Ye Bai, there must be a limit. The difficulty in front of him was obviously beyond Ye Bai's ability. Something must be wrong. But the second brother has always been aloof and has always wanted to be strong throughout his life. Even if there is something wrong with his arrangement, he will not admit it. Ye Bai could only rely on himself to think of a way to break the situation. As the lowest among the strongest, Ye Bai naturally thought of one thing he was good at, bug. He needed to enter the dreamland again and see the child from before. That kid could break through the sword prison much faster than Ye Bai. In this way, Ye Bai only needs to copy the answers to successfully break the game. As expected of you, Shura, I don't do anything about self-reliance, and I don't do anything about opportunism. Ye Bai ignored the disdainful complaints and focused on looking ahead. In order to break the situation, Ye Bai must get help from outside. This external force is Xuemeng. In the dream, I didn't know I was a guest. This sword, Wilhen, can no longer be used. Most likely Lan Bangxian would not be willing to help. The closer the decisive battle between Xiaoao and the most powerful demon is, the more Lan Bangxian must maintain his own state and cherish his sword like gold. Damn it, Shura doesn't even know what he is doing. Boom. The most powerful person in the human race today is carefree and erratic. After the sword energy and demonic energy merged, there was no further action. Then I'll really cut it off. It seems that the human race only has Shuemeng, an all-purpose ox and horse, who is suitable to be used as an ox and horse. If he wanted to send the sword that he didn't know he was a guest into in his dream, Shuemeng had to use all his strength. After Yebai's repeated confirmation, Shuemeng took a deep breath, held his breath and concentrated, and the chains of law appeared all over his body. In the sword prison, Yebai flew out and hit the wall of the sword prison hard. Shura, what on earth are you doing? Before Yebai could curse, his vision went dark and he passed out. Grass. On the contrary, Shura in the sword prison was lying quietly in the demonic aura, very peaceful. Hiss. Looking at the magic prison in front of him, the swordsman smiled contemptuously and said, "Countless strands of demonic energy gush out from the supreme abyss and seep into the sword prison. Obviously, the damage caused by these sword energies to the most powerful demon was not as great as expected." The next moment, something happened that shocked Shuemeng. There was a swordsman in white beside Shuemeng. The traceless sword energy slowly merged into one while strangling these demonic energies. Shuemeng started to panic. Shuemeng felt that things might be a bit too big. They have been with each other for more than 30 years. Although the strongest demon is in a deep sleep, it is not that he has done nothing. He threw the sledgehammer forward, and according to the path planned by Yebai, a surging blood energy rushed forward, rushing left and right in the sword prison, running rampant. Although Shuemeng couldn't understand it, he was greatly shocked. Shura, the most powerful seed in the human race today, is stuck in a quagmire. If Shuemeng exerts his full strength, he must use his talent. Shuemeng didn't know whether Shura entered the dream, whether he was a guest in the dream, or whether he entered the dream directly physically. He was thinking about whether to go all out and dismantle the sword. Yebai then asked Baiju to bring Shuemeng. Why panic? Shuemeng quickly realized another possibility. Why did the originally good situation suddenly turn sour? Yebai, who was hit by this blow, was forced out of Wantianqing on the spot. And where is your father? Online games, only I can see hidden information. Author, Minjai Old Thief. Chapter 740. The sky is gray. When Yebai opened his eyes, he had already appeared in this space. Why does it feel the same as Inception? Yebai raised his hand, pinched himself, and said with emotion, "This dream is so real." In any case, Yebai Kabug's plan was successful. At least, there's a successful start. This time, he still appeared in an open space. Without much effort, Yebai found the child from before, who was still squatting on the ground with his back to Yebai. Yebai approached and knelt down, calling him brother in a familiar manner. "Brother, we meet again. No matter where you go, you can never lose the skill of making relatives." When the child heard Yebai's words, he was a little surprised and said, "Big brother, you're actually back." Big brother? Unexpectedly, the second time they met, the other party not only remembered Yebai, but also had a good impression of Yebai. Yebai nodded with satisfaction. "If you can speak, speak more. Brother likes to listen. The other party is a child, and I am 18 years old. It is reasonable to ask the other party to call me brother. Yebai doesn't think there's anything unreasonable. As for whether the other person will be traceless or a nightmare when he grows up, Yebai doesn't panic. They are all brothers. Yebai calls his eldest brother and second brother all day long, and the other party calls him brother. Does he suffer? You won't suffer at all." Yebai was still taller than the child while squatting. He simply sat on the ground, looked at the other person and asked, "You just said that I came back. Why, has anyone else been here?" The child is still the same as before, unable to see clearly. However, Yebai has become accustomed to it. When it comes to the most powerful person, his eyes are really useless. At least I can prove that this matter involves Xian. From a certain perspective, Trinyan is right. But who cares? Yebai just wanted to humiliate him. As for whether the humiliation was justified or not, he didn't care. Hearing Yebai's question, the child nodded. They only came once before, only you, big brother, are back. As for who they were, Yebai didn't ask, and the child didn't say much. Maybe the second brother used his ability to see this child's childhood. Yebai's appearance here was due to the long river of time and the dual effects of not knowing he was a guest in his dream. Yebai continued to ask. Little guy, what have you been busy with lately? The child said seriously. I heard that the demons are coming. I need to eat more and sleep well so that I can have the energy to fight the demons. Puff. Yebai laughed again. However, there was some doubt in his smile that he did not express. Strange, very strange. This child claims that his parents are dead and he starts the game as an orphan. This is a typical protagonist template. Logically speaking, Yebai should guess that the other party was his second brother's childhood. But Yebai always felt something was different. Although he is irritable, he is not as cold and aloof as his second brother. Wilhen's aloofness should have been present since childhood. Besides the second brother, who else could it be? When my eldest brother was young, there was no such thing as a demon clan. When the third brother was a child, I don't know if there was a blue star at that time. Yebai discovered a sad fact. By the process of elimination, he eliminated all the strongest ones. Things get interesting. The child's voice interrupted Yebai's thinking. Brother, what are you doing when you come back? At this moment, the thick clouds in the sky pressed down a little, and the light dimmed a little. Yebai knew that he didn't have much time. No matter what speculation he had about the child's identity, since the other party would not harm him, his life was not in danger for the time being. It's better to get down to business first. If it doesn't work, Yebai can wait until the CD of Wan Tianqing is over and ask Xuemeng to give him another blow before looking for this child. No big deal. Yebai said casually. Remember the game we played last time? How about we play it again? Aren't you here to fight? Okay. Play with sticks. The last bit of wariness in the child's eyes dropped, and he was about to ask Yebai which pile of sticks he was going to play with. Then, an exquisite pile of more than 100,000 sticks appeared in front of him. Child. The eldest brother doesn't respect martial arts, so he came to attack this little brat. Yebai even extended his hand in a gentlemanly manner, making a gesture of invitation. Children first. Nonsense, you can't do it even if I ask you to do it first. Ignoring Dan Yan's sarcasm, Yebai looked at the pile of wood nervously, preparing to see how the child would break the situation. As long as he is provided with an idea, Yebai can follow the clues and break through the sword prison with his own efforts. There is one more person. Under Yebai's gaze. Yebai knew who he was. The most powerful demon. The scope can be narrowed down to the level of the strongest. However, Yebai also felt that this child's understanding and thinking ability were too terrifying. Essentially, this is a process of elimination. Especially when he was the one holding the thigh, Yebai's patience was particularly good. Looking at the pile of wooden sticks scattered on the ground, the child's expression was a little excited and a little ferocious, and he showed off to Yebai. The other party's name emerged in Yebai's heart. The child looked at the extremely complicated pile of sticks in front of him and fell into deep thought. A person whom Yebai could never guess. He was wrong. He chose the simplest and crudest way to break the situation. Yebai looked at the child silently and moved his eyes slightly upward. The sky behind the child was pitch black, extremely depressing and breathless. Or, Yebai subconsciously forgot that the most powerful beings in the human race are not the only ones who are called the most powerful beings. Two people think faster than one person. Obviously, it is difficult for a child to solve problems that Yebai cannot solve in a moment. However, Yebai waited patiently. The child's face was filled with excitement and ferociousness. He pointed at the pile of sticks on the ground, looked at Yebai, and asked innocently. The child raised his hand and slapped the pile of sticks away. He couldn't wait to see how the child solved the super difficult pile of sticks in front of him. Even if Wuhan came, he probably wouldn't be able to successfully break through the sword prison in such a short period of time. Yebai gave him a thumbs up. Sure. Look, I solved it. Tanyan has experienced 4 awakenings, and Yebai's combat power has improved enough. To the current level, there are very few people whose identity cannot be seen through by Tanyan. Beyond Yebai's imagination, the child only thought for a minute and gave the answer. In fact, Yebai should have known this a long time ago. I know how to play. Brother, are you still playing? These clouds are very close to the ground. If you look closely, you can see some black mist overflowing from behind the child. It's him. Yebai has been guessing whether this child is the second brother's Children's Day comeback or the eldest brother's Children's Day comeback.